Today we are all about 2021 Asian Champions League. A lot of football was just played in a very short amount of time. Plenty of questions, plenty of things to talk about. Who are the best teams? But better yet, is there some more potential talent that should be called up to Team Melli? You know what time it is? It's time for Team Melli Talk. Plenty of celebrating for our Iranian football clubs at Asian Champions League. Lots of goals especially as well. And joining me for today's edition, my good friend, Pasha Gerami. Pasha, great to have you back to Team Melli Talk. Hope you've been enjoying some Asian Champions League. How are things going on your end?
Art, I appreciate you inviting me once again. I'm looking forward to talking about some great football.
And recently, when you and I had a conversation, you told me you were really impressed with Tractor. And which players in particular, would you want to talk about?
Yes, let me preface by saying I was extremely impressed by Tractor Sazi. The reason being is because they have a historically abysmal record in the Asian Champions League with only 25% of their games being won. This time around, they've held 5 clean sheets, which is very impressive in my opinion. And they scored when they had to score. There was a bit of a lack of scoring, albeit, but still they got the job done. In terms of players though, I would say Mehdi Torabi and Mohammad Reza Akhbari, the goalkeeper, were the 2 most impressive players of Tractor Sazi in these past 6 games.
The players you mentioned, definitely on the same page with you, especially with Mehdi Torabi. I mean, he has these moves I really like. And let's not forget, he recently was called up to play for Iran in that friendly match against Syria. So I definitely like what I'm seeing from him. And you also mentioned, of course, goalkeeper Mohammad Reza Akhbari. With him continuing to be in good form, I mean, would you say this is going to make things more difficult, some more congestion in the goalkeeper position for Iran?
I think Akhbari does have a history of inconsistency though. So this could just be a period of him playing some good football. And he has been playing well in these past 6 games. I don't think he's going to challenge for the Iran's top spot in the goalkeeping position. We already have Abedzadeh and Behram Vand, who are pretty much solidified as the top 2. But it's good for Tractor Sazi that he's playing well. And also in regards to Mehdi Torabi, I agree with you. He does have some good moves on him. He plays expansive football, and he's a part of this new generation of right backs who are around 23, 24 years old. And he has a shot of definitely playing. I don't think he will be a starter under Skocic necessarily, but I think he deserves some more playing time.
Now we're talking about Fulad of Khuzestan. Things did not go as well for them. 1 win, 2 draws, and 3 losses. But one player in particular who I'm really big on is right back Saleh Hardani. And he to me, he's one of these players that we have not really heard so much about. And I like what he brings to the table. I mean, what can you add about Hardani and just Fulad in general?
Fulad is from Khuzestan, and Khuzestani teams have been known for their quick players. They're sort of like pacey guys and good dribblers, and we saw that with Fulad. And Saleh Hardani too is another one of those right backs in this new generation of guys who deserve some time at Team Melli. But we have to see, of course. In regards to Fulad and how they played, I thought Jawad Nekunam did great. This is his first major tournament. He has his history with Khune Bekhune and Nasaji, and he did well there. And coming to Fulad, I think he's been offering some modern footballing styles to the players, and I like that. The thing about Fulad was they lacked depth. And we saw in their first 3 games, they played well, they fought hard, they got tired though. All teams got tired, but because they're relying on Shimba, who's 37 years old, and Potosi, who's not really the fastest guy out there, it's difficult to see them scoring a lot of goals without some substitutes coming in and making a difference. So this was a good outing for Fulad. I think if Jawad and Nekunam can stay for a season or 2, they will be a contender for the Iranian Premier League.
Now, of course, when it comes to Persepolis, obviously I was pretty impressed by Shahryar Moganlu, but you mentioned someone else that you were very impressed with from Persepolis, and enlighten us please, because I know a lot of fans are going to be really happy to hear this person's name. Others maybe not as much.
As you mentioned, Shahryar Moganlu scored a good amount of goals, but who was providing those goals? Who was really pulling the strings for Persepolis in the midfield? It wasn't Ahmed Nurulahi, it was Mehdi Torabi. He really played great football. He is so tactically sound. Um, One of the best center attacking midfielders, I believe, in Iran at the moment. And really, he just was elegant in his play. His link up with the strikers was just fantastic. And it just goes to show how well Yahya Gol Mohammadi has been able to utilize the guys that he has. Persepolis really is a class of their own. You mentioned we reached the final last year. We also reached the final in 2018 as well. So Persepolis does have this relatively recent history of great success in West Asia. So I'm just very impressed with Torabi and how he's been able to make things happen in the midfield. I hope we see more of him in the future too for Team Melli.
Time to talk about the boys in blue. And that, of course, I'm not talking about Chelsea, talking about Esteghlal. But sorry, I just had to have a little bit of fun with you there on that one. So with Esteghlal, lots of firepower from them as well. And, you can't be surprised about the player I'm about to talk about. And, this is a player this was a player I was big on even before he got called up to Team Melli. That's Mehdi Torabi. Some awesome highlights from him. What can you say about Mehdi Torabi? And also, of course, I want to hear your input on someone else that really impressed you from Esteghlal.
Torabi was pulling the strings in Persepolis. Mehdi Torabi was pulling the strings in Esteghlal. He was fantastic. Although I do have to say that the opposition, in my opinion, studied him very well. They were man-marking him very closely. He's obviously acquiring a bit of a reputation as being a great player in Asia. So he played very well. I think one thing about Esteghlal that benefited them immensely is they do have depth as well. They have some players that can move the ball around. They have Sheikh Diabate, who's a big, strong guy. They have Motahari. They have other guys who know how to score goals too. And obviously, Ghaidi scored an amazing long shot. I think it was in match day 3 or 4. It was just fantastic. It might be one of the goals of the tournament. And yeah, they scored 14 goals. That's very impressive. 14 goals in 6 games. And one thing I'd like to also mention is I think when Esteghlal fixtures came out and the location, which is in Saudi Arabia, us Iranian football fans were not very happy about that. But considering the adverse situation they found themselves in, they just did great.
Everyone got involved, it seems like, when you look back at, Esteghlal doing well in this first round of Champions League. But there's also Mohamed Naderi, and he's been, he's a unique player. He had a stint with Kortrijk in Belgium. It seems like things didn't work out too well for him with Persepolis, but he scored a couple of goals for Esteghlal. So what can you add about Mohamed Naderi?
We were talking previously about his debut for Iran against Iraq and how abysmal that was. I think he's progressed immensely since that time. He's a really big guy. I think he's like 6'3". He's tall, he's powerful, and he's pretty quick too. So he was pushing the ball pretty quickly up the field, and I was very impressed by that. He did get a goal from that one match that I did watch in one of the earlier group stage games. He was impressive. I think he's going to also fight for that left back spot with Milad Mohammadi because, man, he is just transformed from the guy he was 2 years ago.
You got me right to where we need to be, Pasha. And, there's 3 players I was really focusing on, wanting to talk about to finish this off. And we already started with one. You mentioned Mohamed Naderi. And let's go back to now 2 more players to talk about. First, Saleh Hardani. We talked about him when we talked about Foulad. In your opinion, is he Team Melli material? He's never played for Iran at any level. But in your opinion, is he Team Melli material?
That's yet to be seen. I would love to see him play a couple of friendly matches. But as we previously mentioned, he's a part of this crop of right backs, especially, who are just really doing well, either domestically or in Europe. So he has some competition, but as we both would agree, he deserves a shot to prove himself on the national team level.
And now, the last player, last but not least, you mentioned Mehdi Torabi. You talked about him pulling the strings. And, from what I've seen from Mehdi Torabi, he seems to be that player who does well in friendly matches, but he's kind of a mystery to me. We don't see him play in a lot of big qualifiers. But like you said, with him pulling the strings and doing well in Champions League, what can you say about Torabi, and do you see Dragan Skocic possibly calling him up for those huge World Cup qualifiers that are coming up in June.
You're correct. He hasn't really been given too many opportunities in these big matches. The one game I do think of against a good opposition was against Japan a couple years back under Carlos Queiroz's tenure, where he earned the penalty for Iran. Dejaga ended up missing it, but he scored. Torabi scored the rebound. He played great in that game against Japan, so he definitely has the capability to play against the highest of caliber in terms of Asian footballing teams. I think that he deserves a shot. We look at the team selection for Iran's last friendly match, and the midfield was just so stagnant. I think he would really liven things up if he was given an opportunity to play. He's been doing great at Persepolis, and by all means, I think he should be invited once more by Skocic.
Pasha, just want to thank you for taking the time to join us on Team Melli Talk. Always a pleasure to have you on the show, and I really enjoy talking Asian Champions League with you.
I appreciate it.
And thank you everybody for the support. Really do appreciate it. You know the routine. Get to our website, www.teammellitalk.com. Remember, this is your best source for the latest news on Team Melli, the national team of Iran. Make sure to find us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You know the handle, @Team Melli Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe. Hit that notification button. See you on the next edition of Team Melli Talk.